Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is Festus Seiwoh, a sales professional who has previously worked at Breakcold and is now working independently as a fractional sales leader. Without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Festus. Good to have you here, mate. Can you start by walking us through your journey so far?
I actually initially started in sales. So when I finished school or secondary school, I one of my first jobs was working in very sure, so door to door, selling security alarms. I remember being trained around like Romford and walking around in the heat. Then I had a stint at Tommy Hilfiger within the retail space. I'm based in London, so in and around like West London, White City. And then I mean, this was just before I went to university. I come from a footballing background, so I was playing football for a long time. At the age of maybe like 18, 19, I decided, you know what, let me go to university and further, my qualifications within like the sport space. So I went to university to study sports science. During that time, used my kind of sales skills to build a personal training company, which I had for a couple of years, I think just under five, and I was able to build the company into a branch that had a branch in Liverpool Street, Marylebone, and also Soho. And then, funny enough, it was actually closing all of the deals because what would happen is obviously within those certain locations, a lot of our clients were very high stress professionals of in around the Marylebone branch. You had lots of like Saudi princes and like Middle Eastern royalty and things like that. So I got very used to kind of closing big deals with them because some of our training packages were quite of the higher ticket. And then I realized, man, and the buzz was insane. Like closing a deal and just like handling objections and just things like that was just absolutely insane. I was at a point where I was like, you know what, like what did I see myself doing long term, and what skill that I really wanted to continue to develop. And as much as I enjoy being a practitioner within the health space, I said, from a business perspective, I think I'm got the entrepreneurial itch within me, and I just want to sell, sell, sell. So I then pivoted into chance happened where I broke my ankle, and I had some time to reflect. So this is my process of reflection, and then I said, you know what, let me, I remember, years back, this was probably selling was, the most exciting aspect. It's also the most exciting aspect now that even though I'm a practitioner, I'm still closing those deals is kind of giving me the biggest buzz. So let me just try and get into sales. Then I started selling for a couple like sales agencies, So and it was being thrown in the deep end, that if you think about high volume, cold outbound calling and that kind of stuff, really no email, no nothing. It was just purely dialing and hoping something sticks really. And it was either sink or swim at that moment. It wasn't the most enjoyable, especially in the beginning, but there's a mindset shift somewhere internally with me where I just basically looked at it as okay, well, in as much as it was repetitive, but I at the time I was like, well, how can I do things differently to give me a higher return of investment for the time that I'm investing? So I cleaned my lists. I made sure that my talk track was more specific to the ICPs within that list, and I was able to generate a really good amount of pipeline. Like within a quarter, I was generating that £400,000 plus in pipeline. Funniest thing, especially when it came to like starting with Breakcold, was I've always had this entrepreneurial itch. So I wanted to validate an idea before I went and wasted my time and to build a business or build anything. So I'm scrolling on LinkedIn, following Arnaud, and he's one of the people I really looked up to really look up to as a founder within the SaaS space. Then I saw a post, and it was like almost just things just dropping and dropping in my lap. Really, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a pain that I wanna solve. So I then just I think I used Lemlist or whatever to get his data, and then send him an email. And the long story short, I mean, 2 weeks goes fast. He responds, and he wasn't in the market for the solution, but he just enjoyed the cold email, and we kind of then stayed in contact, spoke about a lot of different things, and then when opportunity arose, he asked me to come and join the team at Breakhold very very early on, to then obviously continue to expand the team. The team's now grown by quite a lot, and they're doing very, very well. So and now we're at the stage in the present where have now decided to just embark on more of a fractional sales roles, just especially within early stage teams, to help them transition away from founder led sales, and to also actually pilot and get a test if the SDR function is a profitable function for them before having to invest in the team and so on and so forth.
Interesting. So like you say, it's you've kind of got a case study with helping founders get out of founder led to kind of team led, because you've done that. You've helped do that at Breakcold, right? So I'm interested. You said about helping like decide whether like an SDR function is needed. But what do you mean by that? Is this whether they go kind of down the more product led route, or whether they build an outbound team?
Not every offer per se is like, because from like a BDR, like just an outbound perspective in terms of cold calling and having the whole stack in multi-channel, not every offer it would make sense financially for you to kind of like go down that route to get your clients, right? So in where it would make sense would firmly be firstly in terms of the size of your deals, right? Because imagine you're paying, for most teams, even the funded ones, they go crazy and they hire like, 2, 3, 4 SDRs, and you're paying salaries plus benefits plus also that ramp up period, which is in essence dead time, and that you spend basically help. It's a Russian roulette. You're kind of like guessing if they're gonna have success. But even before that, we see sometimes in companies is that the founder hasn't really had a really deep understanding as to kind of even what their ICP is, or like what's specifically what kind of like messaging really lands. So it's more or less kind of like getting more bodies in there and hoping that something sticks and doing the volume and things like that. And I'm like, the SDR function, the BDR function, 100% works, but potentially there's check boxes that need to be put in place so that you're not you're when you invest in a team, invest in someone to come and do that function for you, you get more or less a close to immediate return of investment, right? Because right now I think as an industry we are quite happy and used to knowing that the BDR function is going to take a decent amount of time to see a return of investment, but that's for companies that it would work for. But some companies it may never work, and they may never see a really decent return of investment for what they're putting in return to what they're getting out. And for these companies, number one, maybe product led and just founder led sales in more what's the word, in more omnipresent channels like content works. I mean, content works regardless of what bloody channel you use. Content is the most important thing like right now and for the future, right? Because your experience, like even if I'm going to if I'm cold calling for Salesforce, I'm having a completely different experience if I'm cold calling for Acme startup one .com that no one's ever heard of, right? However, if I'm cold calling into, or even with the startup, if example like in Arnaud's case, in Breakcold's case, Arnaud's bloody amazing with content, absolutely amazing, made my life ridiculously easier, because there's a certain level of like familiarity and stuff there. So to go back to the question, the main differentiators in terms of understanding if you're ready for outbound is firstly if your offer is financially makes sense for you to invest a certain amount of time or money to like if you close a deal, is that going to make sense? Like for some clients, my yearly cost is literally paid by one deal. So you pay in the first month, you close one deal for my services. That means you now technically have me for free, and now we have a whole year of just trying to close more deals, and everything else is a plus. So that's where you can potentially. That's what I mean when it says if it makes financial sense. So in terms of the size of your deals, and then also if you have as a founder has also got a certain level of understanding of what has worked in the past, like you've got a process, even if it's not formalized, there's a process, there's a certain level of wisdom and knowledge that you can actually pass on to your new sales team that is going to help them to firstly ramp up, cut across the grass, and speak to the people that are most likely to buy.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So it sounds like you come in where it's like you've got the founder, he's the founder, then he's just, instead of going down the route of hire 5 people and but you're messaging your ISPs, it's like bring bring yourself in to you, because I know you were an AE for a bit of your period at Breakcold, but you were also doing you were doing qualifying, and you were doing cold, some warm, some,
Yeah.
and you were kind of figuring out like, okay, and then I guess once you've validated we need more SDRs, then you can kind of say that to them, and then they're like investing gradually up
Yeah.
rather than wasting them out. And like you say, the higher the ticket, the more the thing that you're selling, the more it makes sense to bring you on, because they pay for you within that first deal.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting, mate. So moving onto Breakhold, so what you an AE part of your time, when you were finding leads, were you doing mostly kind of looking at engagement signals from people that are looking at the content and then reaching out to them, or were you looking at leads cold, loading them into the system and playing that long game on them?
Yes, it's a bit of both. So the lowest hanging fruit, 100%, is people that are engaging with your content. So there's many tools. Shout out to Triggerfy, and well, Triggerfy is kind of the main kind of social listening tool that we're using at that moment, because you're able to, for example, I mean, like as I said, Arno, and even myself at the time, were posting a lot on LinkedIn, and we are going to have a certain level of interest, and those were the easiest deals, even the most kind of more profitable deals, because firstly the time in terms of the sales cycle is like drastically reduced, because there's already that know, like, and trust, and then second to that, like we would build a whole list, so for a quarter, and then for people that meet our like firmographic, and then so those are really cold that they probably never really heard of us, but there's a really good use case here for them that we've done some decent amount of research and stuff for them, which we use tools like fractional for to do research and scoring en masse, and kind of in the middle where it's like cold but because they haven't spoken, but potentially warm is just, again, obviously in the cold we have just firmographics, but then in people who have like downloaded lead magnets in the past, people that have followed let's say a tool that we just integrated with, they follow that tool, they're in that size company that we want, they're in this industry that we know that really works well, then we just kind of reach out to them, so it's more of a tiered system, and you're going to get your quickest and earliest wins from, firstly, closed losts, and the people who are already engaging with your content. And really, that's why content is so ridiculously important, because you can easily get and close much faster deals through that than just the more traditional cold, just having a list and calling cold.
That's it. That's interesting, man. So I'm just interested to know, like, your process. So if you go into Breakcold fresh and you're like, right, the first place you're going to start, if you're doing the like combined SDR BDR AE role, like, you're going to look at all the warm leads and the content, because they're like the warmest leads, and you're going to reach out to them, and like you say, you're going to look at close lost. So are you just going to exhaust all of the low hanging fruit? And that's when you'll then say, look, let's now look at the best leads that are cold but are the best fit. And then because I know you were doing a lot of cold calling and stuff like that. So is that how it works? You just say, like, spend the first 2 weeks exhausting warm and then work your way down? Or are you saying, like, within my week, I'm going to spend 30% on warm, 30% on cold, and 30% doing something else?
So in my specific situation, because I hate an empty pipeline, and I love quick wins in the very beginning, especially because we were testing out the function, right? It was always about, let's go for the warmest people first and exhaust that list so that we can get as many kind of deals on the board, and then whilst I'm nurturing those warm deals down the pipeline, go into the more colder audience, which is obviously going to be a bigger pond, and you can spend more time and stuff doing that. But once you've got, it's more of a psychological, once you've got some deals on that pipeline, you're confident in like closing rates and stuff in that, you can be more detached, to going out and actually doing some more cold stuff, because there's a certain level of desperation that's been moved off you, and you can actually be truly free to open conversations and be more patient. And then obviously then on the other side, prospects and things there's not that instant warning sign or signal of like commission breath or whatever that could be kind of coming from you, because you're genuinely not stressed. You don't really, it's not that you don't care. You're not in control of it, full stop. So there's not something that you should, be too attached to. But you don't really care if they buy or not. You just want to know if there's a pain. Then if there's a pain, then you can offer a next step.
That's interesting. You mentioned commission breath, and I just thought about it. I thought if someone's survival is dependent on commission, it probably does come across in how they outreach. Do you think, like, kind of like going off here, but do you think it's good to like have like a good base salary and then it just take like what takes the commission breath off for you? Is it like just compensation for you, I guess?
Logistically, yes, but commission breath in itself, I mean, that term was coined by Josh Braun. Shout out to Josh Braun, legend. But he, using kind of more stoic mindset, stoic kind of philosophies and things like that. It's like, well, you need to detach. And obviously, for me, I've always had that mindset. But as soon as I went into sales, it was like because there's like targets and goals, and everyone's trying to keep their job and so on and so forth. You completely forget, like I have zero control over large portions of what will happen in this deal. What do I have control over? I have control over how I communicate, right? That means the quality of my actual outbound and my calls and things like that. If I focus on those levers, then I'm going to give myself the best chance at closing deals. So that for me, it was mainly of a mindset shift. And obviously then with actually having a base, look, you're gonna probably put your SDRs in a better psychological position if they've got bills to pay. So if they're not bloody hanging on this deal needs to go through. If because again, you as much as you can try to control it and try to be as stoic and laissez-faire about the situation, you're gonna be panicking if you've got no deals on the bloody board and then it's the end of the month and you've got bills to pay, right? So that definitely helps.
That's interesting, mate. Do you know, like, just sorry, I've gone like a few couple of weaves here, but the one thing that I just, I think in marketing, like they're always saying you've got to have an enemy, you've got to have a villain. And so one of the ways that that comes across in LinkedIn is outbound is dead, SEO is dead, and it's like none of them are dead. But it's the thing I've been thinking about recently is like the levers we pull, and with cold, it's like as soon as you stop, it's like ads. As soon as you turn the taps off ads, it goes back to zero.
Yeah.
Whereas with content, it's like you build the following, you build the goodwill, you build the trust. It's like a compounding system, but it's like cold outbound still has its use. You can't then go just because warm outbound is an asset. Warm content is an asset that you build doesn't mean cold isn't a good strategy as well, because cold actually brings people into the content kind of
Yeah.
funnel as well and the following. So it all kind of comes together.
Yeah.
I don't know what the question was going to be there.
No, 100% agree. And like every single company needs to be doing content because again, we're in the market now where the trust is ridiculously low, but then it's also probably easier to build trust because there's a certain level of visibility that you can now give in your company and in your business that potentially may have not been cool or part of the status quo previously. Now with content, it is because even if I cold call someone, I email someone. Okay, I cold call someone. We book a meeting. I send an email to confirm that meeting. They check my domain and then they go on the bloody website. They then see, oh, there's some content here. They then see all the social media stuff, because I've connected with them on LinkedIn. That's 100% automatically going to put the prospect at ease and actually get them more convinced about your solution than you just physically trying to convince them on a call. Because you can try to convince me with anything. But I think now we're a bit more, the buyer's in a lot more control psychologically to say no and to not be like, a buyer's a lot more hesitant because there's more information that they could go and see that has access to them for them to make a decision, right? And like, for example, like, if I was to buy anything, like genuinely, if someone was to cold call me and ask to buy anything, if I go on the social media and I see that they have a social media, oh, this is a real company. Like it could just be completely false and it could be probably the most intricate scam whatever. But I'll go on social media and be like, okay, cool. There's content there. This is a real company. Oh, I like the view. This is pretty sick. And then you start selling yourself of the company before you even get on the call.
What you said is so interesting because there's some parts of marketing which are checkbox,
Yeah.
and an example of that is the company page. Company page is like, in my opinion, its only purpose is to go. We have we've got 2 to 11 2 to 10 or 11 to 50 employees. It's like, all check. And the next thing you look at subconsciously is you look at how many people follow the page, and if you see 1,000 plus, you're like, check. And all of a sudden, you don't follow the content on it. It's literally just like those two stats. Same with a landing page. It's like with a landing page, it just needs to be good enough and like have good enough copy, have like a decent color, have like decent graphics, but it doesn't need to have all of the animations under the sun and have 50 million different pages. It's like check. Whereas when it comes to like marketing, like looking at, Arnold's like CEO Breakcold's like looking at it, like really good marketing. That's not a check. That's like it's more like
High level.
the big lever,
Yeah, yeah,
the level, you know.
exactly, exactly.
Sorry, just a quick I went off on one, but I just want to talk to you about trust because when the reason I just want to explain that the reason obviously I've invited you on today is so when you're at Breakcold, I was just really impressed with how I ended up becoming a Breakcold customer without really knowing, and I felt like you were my buddy throughout the whole process. And I was already warmed up through Arnold's content, and then obviously when we chatted, it was like I felt like you were genuinely there to help me, and then we hopped on a call like and then all of a sudden I was like the law of reciprocity. I was like, I gotta buy into these guys. So I just want to hear more about like your method because I did not, how you see it coming a mile off when someone like sends you a DM, they're waiting for the response. I did not see anything coming, and it was
Yeah,
just so clever.
yeah. I mean, but we want to be genuine with sales, right? And again, this like a good mindset to have in sales is, can I genuinely help this person? Does their life become easier? And is what they're trying to achieve, do I help them to do that better from my knowledge and what I've been able to acquire than potentially what they're the way they're doing things currently, right? So like even our conversation, like firstly, I mean, we were just conversating anyways because there was so much value that you were giving out from like the content perspective. So it was like I was learning so much, and it was like I wanted to like actually conversate and to speak about certain things and like just bounce off each other. And I think we even started speaking mainly around like sales process and things like that. In terms of like, because I remember you were obviously you're making a certain pivot, adding certain systems and stuff in the business. I said, okay, well, look, I am in this space. To me, like there's something I could potentially have in terms of knowledge and stuff like that that could help, right? So it's more just actually leading. It's like, okay, firstly, look, Joe, can I help you? Okay, yeah, I think I could help you. Like genuinely, do I think I can help you? And can I do it for free? Yeah, for sure. So in terms of the process, it's actually, and I think I've been seeing this result slightly more in terms of like the outbound that I'm doing for clients. But we'll talk about lead magnets quite a lot, right? But not just like a PDF, right? If like what the if you can give a certain level of value that can help your prospect kind of like get to the next level slightly in terms of like understanding or like how they could potentially do something, they can action that now and then get to the next level. You've already kind of bridged the step to like your solution. So that was mainly it. It's like, look, you have this current problem right now, but if like I'm gonna be able to help you with what I can give you right now for completely for free to get closer towards that step that you want, right? And it was just fortunate enough that obviously the tool that's helped me to do that is also the tool that obviously Breakcold that we were using, right? So it was a lot more natural and it just kind of like flowed naturally. But subconsciously for me, and just like, well, not even subconsciously, intentionally for me, my main motivation was helping you to bridge a certain gap from this is where you are right now, this is where you want to be. I strongly believe that Breakhold is the best vehicle to get you there. But firstly, I need to prove to you that giving you certain like information, right, that you can go and implement regardless of whatever tool you use, you're going to be able to get there. But the only caveat is that using Breakhold is probably the best option for you to tick all the boxes to get to where you want to be. Because Joe, you've got lots of options. Like there's more than one way to skin a cat. So we can't just like be like, oh yeah, our solution is best. People are getting the job done without our solution. So it's all about highlighting the direction or a way that we can do things that may be more efficient, maybe better in a way that you care about, not what I care about.
Yeah, but the other thing you mentioned is about like you kind of is you're selling a product you believed in,
Yeah.
and you used it. This is the thing: is like people solving their own pain point or using their own product, and it's like for you, like you were using the CRM to then reach out to people to nurture them,
Yeah.
um, and the really incredible thing about Breakcold, like hopping on with Arnold as well when he helped out and with yourself, is you understand sales to a really deep level when I talk to you. So I was like, okay, CRM is a sales tool. These guys understand sales. These guys use CRM to help them get better at sales. It's like you've proven to me that you know what you're doing and this is the right tool. So I don't have to do the thinking. I can just trust.
Yeah.
I can trust your judgment on that. It's
Yeah, we're dog fooding, right? Like we're dog fooding our own product, and you'll be surprised how many companies potentially don't do that and I'm like, it's a bit sketchy.
but it comes back to being genuine.
Mm.
It's like you believed, you're using your own product because it actually helps. So it's you've got to have two things. You've got to have a product. You've got to have a great product that over delivers on expectations, and so you've got to have a product side that does that, and then you've got to have salespeople that genuinely want to help people, and then they believe in their product so much that they're just playing matchmaker. And when you've got those two things, but if one of them falls down, like if your product is slightly worse than the expectations you set up,
Yeah,
buyer's remorse,
yeah,
negative word of mouth, and if you and on the same coin, like if you've if you've got a great product but you don't have the salespeople, they're not getting foot in the door. So you just got to have
you
both.
have to have both. But and I agree that it's so much easier to believe in the product. I mean, to believe in what you're selling if the product is good, right? So like, I mean, it is an absolute like blessing to actually be able to sell a product that that you believe is good. So like, I mean, I was like, because I'm a huge fan of Breakcold in terms of just as a product as a whole. I think it's genuinely probably going to make the biggest dent in the market. And I mean, the newest update with like the Fireflies integration was absolutely insane. I bloody nearly lost my mind when I saw it. I was like, everything's just going to get ridiculously more easier. And it's almost like when you have all these problems, right? And like you can ideate on like a product, and then someone's actually building that product, and then in your brain you're thinking, how the hell does this person like reading my mind? That was a stage that was that even before I joined Breakcold. So it was much easier to sell. And yeah, like I mean, shout out to Breakcold, really.
Top man. Right, I want to switch gears a little bit now. What are your top sales tips for AEs in SaaS today?
Sales tips of preparation, right? Like main thing is like I'd say before anything, the discipline of preparation is gonna get you. It's gonna deem your results more than anything. And I say discipline or preparation, but I also look at discipline full stop. Because if you don't have discipline, there's no process that's going to work. It may work for a week, may work for 2 weeks, whatever. But if you don't have discipline to follow through with processes and like be quite strategic about how you do things, you're not going to have a certain level of consistency that's going to raise your stress levels, and then you're going to burn out really quickly, and your perception of like reality is going to be completely altered. So a job in an industry that you probably loved, if you didn't have the discipline to put in the right processes, you're going to burn out, and you're going to hate that industry or that job that you loved and it was a dream job to get into. Second is detachment. Again, I think being, shout out to Josh Braun, but I think in anything in sales, being detached from the outcome, not caring about the outcome, but being detached about the things that you can't control. As a SDR, BDR, AE, if you put in your best foot forward, you follow through and are disciplined on the processes that you know are like the best practices, you 100% are going to increase your chances of closing deals. But at the end of the day, we're not dealing with AI and robots, we're dealing with human beings. So lots of things come into play with that, where they can then make a irrational decision, even though the most rational decision is following through with your solution. So being detached from that allows you to firstly perform better. It allows you to perform in a lower stress situation. So that means your communication skills and your questioning, your how you find pain is a lot better, because you're not focused on just like going through the checklist of let me qualify them, budget, authority, and so on and so forth, and just not using frameworks and stuff like that just to go through things, but actually having a conversation with a human being. And I mean, I wish I could give like more like we'll say structured or like very, very generic, like just like AE, these are the frameworks and stuff like that, because a lot of frameworks work, but if you don't have the kind of behavioral skills or the mindset, you're then not really going to work to the best of their ability. So in more or less kind of like my third tip, really, it's we spoke briefly about going through like budget and like questioning and things like that, But also remember, in B2B, you're still selling to a human being. So the same. I was able to take consultative selling skills from my B2C selling high ticket in coaching programs into SaaS purely because in as much as when you're selling coaching, I'm digging down and trying to understand pain to see if it's and the severity of the pain, right? And also how willing someone is to fix that problem and at what speed they want to fix that problem, right? Let's say in the case of fitness, for example, I still use that same line of questioning in SaaS because in and as much as and this is no, I'm still speaking to a human being, so I can it's like multi-tiered, right? I can focus on their pain in their position and what that means for them and for their role and everything else. And I can also then go, let's say level up in terms of like their company's pain and what that means for their company, because yeah, at the end of the day, everybody wants to make their life easier. So even though we're in B2B, there's still B2C crossovers, because we're still not selling to robots. So we're still selling to human beings who make decisions, sometimes not the most rational decisions, but we're human beings and this is what we do.
Mate, that's so interesting. So yeah, you like you say that the common thing between B2B and B2C is human nature.
Yeah.
And so like the process is the same, but it'll be a different pain point. One of them might be a more B2C type pain point, whereas the other one, and then like you say with B2B, you've then got the per individual, because there is still individual benefits. Like if you're targeting a CR, like the budget holder for the marketing budget, it's like what's your benefits to you, but then your team, so team level and then company level as well. The other thing that was interesting is a lot of the things you're saying, preparation, discipline, detachment, like all have parallels with your background in sport, in football, because it's like being detached from the outcome. If you give your best performance but you lose, like it's not ideal, but you've got discipline, like you only get better and compete at a high level when you do that. Preparation, like everything is done before the actual the football match.
Yeah.
And it's like I do see a lot of athletes do end up going into
Yeah.
sales. And the other thing, mate, the other thing I've noticed is I haven't shared this actually. I went down the completely wrong route. I did engineering, and in engineering, they're like, go and sit 2 weeks in that room on your own, don't speak to anyone, and solve integrals. The mindset shift then come back to like talking to customers and stuff. But what I see is like the parallels between like sales and entrepreneurship. Like all the things you said are things that I've learned kind of on my own as well, learning stuff.
Yeah.
There's a reason why a lot of salespeople are entrepreneurs as well, and they switch over.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
But yeah, back to the next question, mate. So, how important is it to combine cold calling, email, and LinkedIn when you're doing outbound? What happens like if we just say like, what, let's go single channel, let's just do LinkedIn? Can that still work? Like, what do you think's the best overall approach?
I mean, if you just look at it from like a non like just the most basic level, the more like bites you have bite at a cherry, one of them's gonna stick, right? Or the more tries, the more bloody raffles you buy, you have a higher chance of winning, right? So the more times you can contact or find a way to contact that prospect, that individual, the greater chance that you are going to be able to kind of get through to them, right? Caveat with it is like, especially for cold calling, you want to actually, as saying from what we mentioned in the beginning, you also want to know that if it's a channel that's going to be profitable for you and if it's even worth kind of like your investment in doing that. I highly recommend multi-channel, but it's just that not every channel should be kind of like embarked on, but there should be 100% a multi-channel kind of like aspect of things, and it can also happen gradually. So in a case where you start on LinkedIn, right, and that's like a really good kind of area for you, but you find that sometimes when you get in low response on LinkedIn, but then you kind of like sprinkle in some email, that has increased your ability to now speak to more prospects and close more deals. And then you then later find out actually, as the business develops, that actually potentially calling these same prospects and these leads and stuff like that is more beneficial. You end up actually going through every single one and keeping them flowing, right? So I see that naturally when you're really focused on like building the business, you will start venturing into the other channels, and you may start in one. So like, I'd probably LinkedIn is probably the lowest barrier to entry channel. And when I talk about, I mean set up like and cost and things like that in terms of like compared to email. Emailing, you having to find the data, you having to set up the infrastructure and things like that. But we have most companies who we start cold on email so that we can maybe validate the idea and the offers and things like that. Mix it in with LinkedIn, so then when people see the content on LinkedIn, increase the trust and things like that. Because if you did one without the other, something's gonna stick. But imagine if you led with content, how much more is gonna stick. So yeah, I'm a big advocate for multi-channel. I think that sometimes they come in phases, and not all multi-channel. I think you should do multi-channel, but not all multi-channel is probably beneficial for you depending on your company structure and size.
Yeah, I love that answer, mate, because you've said like if someone's starting off, forget multi-channel, just pick LinkedIn, lowest barrier, just get used to. But then it's like as you start from simple, you can then go like, let's add in an email kind of a day later, and let's try kind of fine tuning things. Let's try cold calling, but you don't need to just get everything in one at the start, which is like, and like you say as well with content, you're getting that free frame. If they've seen your stuff and they like your stuff, and there's two words that have come out of this chat we've had so far, which is trust but value. And it's like people, you watch a YouTube video and say what makes a good lead magnet, and they start talking about checklists and all these things. It's like that doesn't really matter. That's just the format value goes in, and value is judged. I saw some guy do a lead magnet on LinkedIn, and he had like GTM strategies, he had product led, like sales led. He basically had everything, like, and I had to go to all these different sources before, and he had it on a single page.
Yeah.
And I was like, I am getting that resource, and now I associate him with value and trust and value, just over and over again. I love it, mate. So, how do you see the working lives of BDRs, SDRs, AEs changing in the next like 1 to 5 years because of more sales tech, AI?
I think the quality is actually it's sink or swim. So depending on your mindset, I think the quality of your work should increase as a BDR and SDR, because we have more tools to help us to do more things at scale. And I think we should not be focused on giving more volume at scale, but potentially giving more value at scale. And again, keyword value. So like, if I can do research at scale, that means the conversations I have, I can find more valuable talking points for each prospect. Now, then that means more the conversations I have, just in terms of like per capita, are more. Because I'm giving more value in the conversations, they're also going to be more successful. I think we saw AI come out and all these tech come out, and we just thought volume. Oh my gosh, I'm going to speak to way more people. And I'm gonna like just saturate this bloody channel and I can do more, right? In terms of volume, they just say that they were just throwing rubbish out, but more rubbish. If we said, okay, well, let's actually improve. I always say it's like it's not a repetition issue. Sometimes it's a skill issue, right? If you improve the skill and the quality of that, before you pull the lever of volume, you're most likely gonna get the best kind of return of investment, with that. So I see BDRs, SDRs, that if they adopt a certain mindset with the tech of just, okay, now I can produce more value on scale instead of now I can do more on scale, then we are going to potentially I think we may even have a more receptive sales kind of like, I would say, environment. Kind of, it's funny because like for the past couple of years we've all been talking about this really low trust society and things like that, and it hasn't been made better by the hope and spray now that we can do things on scale, right? But I think there's a winds of change somewhere, maybe in the mindsets now, with the ability to, we know that what people are more receptive to. I think we're actually borrowing this from the B2C crowd, because most people that work like coaches and stuff like that in the B2C crowd, they are so big on content, so big on creating like value and speaking like on a one-to-one basis with each prospect, because they know that that's what closes. Now we're understanding that we're speaking to human beings and actually being interested in the things that are interesting to them is what's going to help us to close deal. Now we can do that on scale and en masse. We're going to see more. We should see actually better relationships built and more conversations built. However, we're on. This is like the Matrix, the blue pill and the red pill. We're either going to keep going with like more mass and fake personalization and stuff like that, and the industry as a whole is going to, as a B for BDRs, is going to just then be replaced by whatever AI SDRs out there, because that's what I mean. In essence, that's they can probably do it better than most of us as human beings who are just want to play their game. But if we focus on as a human being and being social animals and knowing how to build relationships by letting the AI help us to get more information and actually like do the research for us and help us, but we're still the ones, the operators, kind of going out there and actually creating the conversations, then we can, if we choose that, then we have a better sales environment where everybody has better conversations and probably people start becoming more receptive to cold outreach or like just sales outreach as a whole.
Oh, mate, I love that answer. Do better. It's like do better. The other thing is I keep seeing, I don't know if you've seen it like in LinkedIn, like all these AI avatars people are talking about, and I just don't get it. I think how can you like you don't know who's coming up with the content behind that individual. I was speaking to my co-founder as well. He's like about motion graphics versus like human talking head videos. Like you can't see it. You're not getting the human connection and the human emotion from it. Like but yet people are just so obsessed with the surface level of that looks cool. But the interesting thing with B2B is if you're targeting a decision maker like a CMO, a head of a business owner, they're pretty switched on and they're already thinking about all this stuff and they don't care about surface level like that looks good. And it's like it translates to what you're saying because it just comes down to make your outreach better, make it more valuable. And you can show value just through your words you say and how you communicate. Like there's a YouTuber I used to watch, and he's got hundreds of that, and people tune in. He's got such good engagement rate because and he's just filming on his phone in front of a whiteboard, and you can't read his scribbles because when he talks, you're like, oh my god, I've not heard this from anyone before, and this is insane. And it's the same with our conversation. Like we could be on like high production set and everything, and talk nonsense, or we can literally just be here and there's so much value in this. Like we're going to chop it up into there's so much value here for sales professionals, business owners, and it just comes down to the words you say and the experience you've had.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the color grading, not any of that stuff, the light and the audio.
It's all about
Um,
the substance. That's it.
it's the substance, mate. And that's it. Like what you're talking about in outbound, like if you've got someone reaching out to you and there's substance behind the message or there's some value in that, you're gonna get back to them.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say there's nothing wrong. When people say outbound is dead and this is that. There's nothing wrong with outbound. There's nothing wrong with any channel. There's a lot wrong with certain messaging, but genuinely, like if I would honestly say someone reached out to me with something that was important to me and they were solving they knew my pain and they were showing me a solution to my pain. Like I don't think is there any human in the world that would not bite your hand off at the opportunity. So if you're not getting responses, maybe we need to look at how we're kind of communicate, if the pain that we're solving is big enough for them, or if we're communicating it correctly. But I'm big on quality of sales. I think sales and business as a whole is as known to the human as anything else, as breathing. I think because it's communication. We sell everything. We're in business for everything. Everything that we do in life, really.
Everything's a value exchange, yeah, and bartering like back in the day. So, question, the hypothetical question. So, the more burning the pain, like the problem, like if you break your arm, you go to the hospital, right? But like the less burning the problem, the more you have to think about how you're going to send the messages. So, if I were to DM you out the blue and you didn't know who I was, you went straight in with the pitch, but it nailed your pain point. Would you consider chatting to them, or do you need some level of warming up, no matter how much they've nailed your pain point? If that makes sense.
I think probably what piques my interest more is if someone knows more about me and my pain. Personally speaking, like I'm happy with both ways. Like I mean, if you're giving me value from the beginning and we're talking and like we're nurturing and everything else, absolutely, you're gonna bloody sell me whatever way. But I think on the flip side as well, obviously, again, but this is down to execution, right? So like, if someone pitches, oh my gosh, like it's just like roll your eyes and whatever, right? But if you pitch me something immediately and like exactly the pain that I have and you're speaking it in my terms, and you've assumed and say, okay, you know what? Normally when you have this pain, you've tried this before, and you've hit the nail on the head as what I've probably tried before, and it hasn't come to solve the solution, and then you offer your solution, I am going to listen, because how the heck did you know that? How that where is there a camera somewhere in my room? You know my pain. You know what I've tried before, and you know it's still a pain. And you've offered a solution. I'm going to hear you out. Like 100%. I'm going to hear you out.
That's such an interesting point you make, because it's like you can get the generic, you say, "Hey Festus, struggling, switched off," because you just like you know what's coming
Yeah.
after that. But if it's like, "Hey Festus," like, and you just you kind of like you know the problem so well, you don't need to call it out explicitly. You can like again, like you say, it comes down to the execution.
Yeah. And also, it's just, again, if you know the problem, right? So, like, one exercise I love to do before I like do any campaign, or if I'm like doing anything with clients or any kind of campaign whatsoever, is okay, what's their pain? How are they communicating that? And what are they currently doing, or people within this group on this ICP, what are they currently doing to solve that? And what are the pros and cons of that solution? So then I get an understanding. I'll be like, oh, look, most people that are most people within your position are, I see that they're struggling with these things, and this has resulted in this. But however, they've also tried to fix this, but there hasn't been. But naturally, what has happened is that this con. Then you kind of pitch your offer, like, have you we've solved this problem without this pain, without this con. Are you open to having a conversation, further? So, like, actually knowing more, I think sometimes maybe we rush the process, like, especially if I'm in previous roles that I've worked in, like more in the kind of more traditional, like, just bloody get on the phone and dial. We rush understanding whose problem we're solving. But if you really understand the problem that you're solving, and you spend time doing that, and you prepare, like, I would say the most preparation should go in understanding your prospect. Once you nail that, I promise you, like, literally, you're not selling. You're just having conversations with people it's like you're a therapist. You're just having conversations with people whose pain you understand, and offering them a solution. If they want to, you can lead a horse to the water. You can't force them to drink. Some people need, listen to their therapist. Some people don't.
So if you were to have your own sales team, Festus, would you recommend that you just give them like all the ICP docs straight away, and then they're just like learning that? Or do you think actually like just dive straight in, read it as you go, like you're gonna figure it out as you go? What's the best way to train a salesperson?
I'd start with given information of what we already know about the ICP, right? And in terms of like ramping them up, I wouldn't spend time going through that. In essence, like, I'll make it very simple. This are the types of people that normally buy. This is why they buy. This is what they said in regards to why they bought, and why they didn't buy from other people, right? And this is the problem that they said that we fixed. All right, let's listen to some calls. This is how I've communicated all of these three things. Let's listen to some calls, right? And let's do a ton of role play, ton of role play, and let's get on the phones. Because I really think that most times SDRs could probably be ramped within I don't know, week and a half, really, in terms of getting them into actually calling. But I think we spend a lot of time, because I don't know, maybe some companies don't really know the pain, or maybe they're so enterprise that they have multiple pains they're after, or the ICPs and stuff that they're after. But yeah, I think within a week. But the most important, and I think this is what I don't know if it was Gong or if it was Nooks, that one of their SDR, that their whole SDR ramp function. But they show that, look, if you just get people on the phones and letting them listen firstly to how selling is done, and then do lots of role play, and then get them on the phones as quickly as possible, you're probably going to get them ramped up and get them to understand what to sell, and get the feedback as quickly as possible, and help them to improve.
God, mate, when I was saying to you earlier about the parallels between sales and the entrepreneur side, is like they say, like, stop fiddling around with your website, stop doing this, go and speak to your customers. And it's like, who is speaking to to potential customers every day? Sales. And so, like, who is best positioned to say, actually, like, the pain points we've got here aren't really the things that are hitting home? Sales. Like, you guys are like this mini entrepreneurial, like, speaking to customers. You are best positioned to kind of then feed back to marketing to say, we need to change our messaging, we need to change our website copy. Like, it comes from you guys.
Yeah, for sure,
Pretty incredible.
for sure.
Final question then, mate, because there's a lot of questions, but I want to be respectful. For anyone who wants to connect or work with you, where's the best place they can reach you?
So I mean, I'm all happy on like LinkedIn to just send a DM. They can also reach out to me via email. So it's just literally my first name at my surname. So Festus at SEIWOH.com, and that's it. And you can send me an email on there, or just connect with me on LinkedIn and send a DM.
Amazing, man. I'll put both of the links in the description. And yeah, mate, thanks for joining today. It's been a really interesting conversation, and excited to see kind of what comes next for you with the fractional roles.
Yeah, me too. Well, thanks for having me on, and yeah, love the conversation and great questions.
Thank you, my friend. Have a good one.
Cheers.